Hi. I hope you can hear me. I know that let's see. Okay. I know that my microphone isn't the greatest, so I'm gonna try and speak clearly and loudly. Just a trigger warning for anyone who happens to watch this. Um, and if you do, join, say hi. Anyway, um, basically anyone who requires a trigger warning and is watching this, please just I don't know where this is going to go, so just a warning. Basically, um, this is going to be weird for a lot because people are going to be jumping in and not fully understanding what this is about, but it is what it is. So for the last 2 years or so, I've been trying to get out of what started as a form of human trafficking. I'm going to get into that in a few minutes. I just started to record this and then I decided to do it live, quite possibly so that people, recognize that this is not. At one point, I think there may have been some people thinking that this was performance art. It is not performance art. In 2019, I had fled. I had been living with my mom and her husband after I had left an abusive marriage. And it's not something I had really talked about with a lot of people because I had been dealing with battered women syndrome. Um, it was PTSD from battered women syndrome, and I do have to let people know that it wasn't physical abuse with my second husband. It was primarily psychological and emotional abuse. And I need to explain that with him, it wasn't like he was not going to outright, like, so essentially, one of the biggest issues is that I don't have any friends anymore. And part of that has to do with the fact that when he and I, when I moved in with him, when he and I got married, he isolated me. And it wasn't something where it was like he would tell me that I wasn't allowed to have friends or I wasn't allowed to go out and do things. It was more so that he didn't believe in communication, and what he believed in was essentially getting like I would live my life how normally I would have, prior to meeting him, and how I wanted him in my life, and all that. And it wasn't something he wanted, but instead of telling me, what he would do is just wait and then get really, really mad and explode. Because for him, he's like, well, I'm not going to tell you you're not allowed to do something, but then I would do something. If he wasn't happy, he would, psychologically manipulate and attack me, and it's not okay. Now I deeply regret even, like he and I met in 2002 online on a website, Am I Hot? Which I don't know if anybody was aware of this. Am I Hot it was at the time it was a photo rating website that allowed it had dating and allowed children to be on it. So he was 18 or 19 and I was 16. I Now the thing was, like, the dating portion of the website, children weren't allowed on, but the photo reading site, children were allowed on. So what would happen is, a lot of adults would target kids on the photo reading, like a lot of photo reading sites back in the day. Um, anyway, um, he um, he had actually driven 3 hours to meet me back then. My boyfriend had just committed suicide when I was 16, and I never really properly healed, and I think that a lot of people didn't know that. And to be honest, like, a lot of the decisions I made um, for many years, I deeply regret, because I wouldn't have made them had I been, gotten the help that I properly needed, had I had the opportunity to heal properly and grieve. Um, anyway, so I am, sorry, I my second ex husband's like, he had grown up 3 hours away from where I grew up, and a lot of my friends didn't know him. He did happen, sorry, he did happen to attend one of my proms with me. But I went to two schools. I went for the first half of my freshman year. I went to my home high school, and you'll see in my videos if you want to watch. There is a video. It's unlisted right now. You actually have to go to the 3 hour video. I have the link in there regarding alternative schools. But he, anyway, sorry, I'm all over the place. I started to do this video with a goal in mind, and then I got distracted, so I do apologize. Um, anyway, like, I'm sorry. This has been really. I feel like live, this is much harder, but I think it's really important because I am still currently alive. This is not fake. Um, in 2019, I fled my mom. Basically, I caught her and her. I had moved in with her and her husband because when I was so fucked up from the abuse of my second husband, and my parents, they like they either don't believe that I have legal rights, or they don't see me as a human, or like they for whatever reason still see me as a child, and for whatever reason, both of my divorces, while I was entirely entitled to alimony and compensation, especially with the first one, because he took advantage of me. He really didn't want to be married to me. He just used me for a free trip to Canada, and spent all my money that it wasn't my money. My mom had assisted me to go to school, and then a lot of it was on credit cards. I did get a job. I actually had a really good job while I was living in Canada, but I still had to, a lot of stuff on credit cards. So he owes me so much money, but he had threatened to sue me for alimony because he didn't work. He should have, but no, he wouldn't have gotten alimony because the majority of it was on credit cards, and a lot of it, was like basically a student loan from my mom that was meant to be repaid. But the thing is, like, my parents didn't necessarily, see me as being someone who had the legal right to alimony. And so when I moved home and got divorced and was, I moved home, I was going through divorce, going through the process of divorce, was diagnosed with cancer. My dad's just like, file for bankruptcy. That's what it's there for, as opposed to me fighting for my rights so that I wouldn't have to file for bankruptcy to begin with. Anyway, I'm sorry. My second husband, I gave up a 10-year career for him, which he actually claims he doesn't believe that I had a career. He doesn't believe, like, I was on a, I did, hair and makeup for 10 years. I was very blessed to have the opportunity to be on a television show when I lived in Canada. It was called Band Photo, spelled with an F, BANFOTO. It's actually still aired on Ox TV, which is like was a major music network. It's not a channel anymore, unfortunately, but the show is still available to watch online. And again, I think at some point my begging for help, someone thought was like an ad for the show. It was not. I've been trying to get out of what started as a trafficking situation. And one of the scary things is that the people who were responsible, at least one of them had started adding my friends on Instagram to their friends list, and even actually started drawing photos of people on my friends lists, which was absolutely terrifying. Um, sorry, this is an uncomfortable smile. This is not a happy smile. I think I'm gonna need to go get a drink in a minute, but I'm gonna keep trying to talk anyway. So I had fled and ended up moving in with my mom. I should have had alimony. I should have kept my house. I should have kept all. I have one dog and a cat. I had two other dogs. I should have kept all of my children. I miss my kids, and I know Ruby misses her Kaylee and Ray miss. I know that, and she misses her house and her yard. but it is what it is, I guess, at this point. And the fucked up thing is like when I fled my mom, somehow she had like convinced a bunch of people. I at a certain so what I came on to talk about. I'm gonna get to in a second, but I had been asking for assistance in finding an attorney, and sorry, I have hair on my nose, and I want to get the hair off my nose. Hi, I see someone just jumped on. Sorry, I'm trying. I have a random hair that's like sticking on my face. I don't know who you are, but hello. And I'm just warning you know that this may have triggers. So if you're someone who needs that trigger warning, just beware. So essentially, I had fled my second marriage, and my mom kind of like, as opposed to making sure that I had a divorce attorney, she bought herself a house, had me move in, and then immediately tried to take over my finances. And it was just like, no, 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 no. I did. First off, I asked her if I would be safe living with her, because I had expressed concern to someone about moving in with her, based off of what I went through in my childhood, and like it's not something I'd really had the opportunity to talk about. I know that I was, not always the easiest child, but you know, a lot has when I was growing up. I'm 36. I know I look a lot younger than I am. I'm 36. I'm gonna be 37 this year. Um, when I was growing up, the school of thought and psychology regarding um, whoever that was just jumped off. So the school of thought in psychology had been that if there's a problem with the child's the problem. Whereas and I actually my childhood therapist did in fact apologize to me many years later, because the reality was it's not always the child that's the problem. There are often outside influences and factors, especially abuse. And my mom had been both of my parents and I, it wasn't like they were intentionally abusive, um, but they were abusive. And narcissistic abuse is one of those things that it's very dangerous. With my mom, it had been basically my dad would just kind of dismiss it and say, just do what your mom wants, just make her happy. Essentially, just a way to get her to stop abusing us, or so that he wouldn't be the one perpetuating the abuse. Now, I do have to say, I do remember in the beginning, like in my early childhood, there was a lot of toxic masculinity from him that fed into our family. But I do have to say again that I honestly believe it had a lot to do with their religious beliefs. So yeah, um, I don't want to get too into depth with that right now, but anyway, one of the things I wanted to talk about was in basically in 2019, I when I moved in with her and her husband, I had asked them if I would be safe, because she's her religious and political beliefs are that people who are not of the same mindset as her are the enemy, and she will say that's not true, but then act in an entirely different manner, and then towards and when she's at home, like just say and act very different than she tries to put herself, out there. So I had been asking people for help for about 2 years, and people were just kind of like, just do, like, ignore it, pretend it's not happening. And it's just like, no, that's not, we can't just pretend it's not happening. So eventually I caught her and her husband. I have, another video you'll hear, like, they're regarding my mom, like there's audio clip of her and her husband. Um, I'd caught them, and sorry, I hope you don't mind them. Right now, I really need my emotional therapy dog. She's such a good dog. I had caught them, and like it was then you can just, as opposed to, she claims that she would had wanted to work through things, but that's not true. If she had wanted to work through things, she wouldn't have acted the way she'd acted. If she wasn't racist, she wouldn't have acted the way she acted. If she wasn't full of hate, she wouldn't have acted the way she acted. She wouldn't have blamed it on me. She would have, we would have talked things out, as opposed to her just, attacking me. But essentially, like, she threatened my life and told me to just go ahead and try to leave. Um, I was 34, and yes, I had been dealing with a lot of medical health issues, but she also didn't believe my mental health issues. Like, the way I talk, and I like to discuss things with people, and it seems to confuse a lot of individuals, because it's almost like some of the people who were in my life just would like take things like not just like absolutely literally, when I know like we need to have a dialogue. Like, I apologize if I'm not communicating properly. I'm sorry. I know I have issues with communicating. Um, anyway, so like one of the things, like, at one point I did get a lupus diagnosis, which I do have documentation of from the doctor. And but the one doctor, other doctors, didn't necessarily think so, because it's one of those conditions that's like hard to diagnose. And the thing is that it implied that my mom would also have lupus, and she like lost her mind. But the thing is, like, looking at her medical health and how she spent like the majority of her life sleeping, she quite possibly does have lupus. Because like as an adult, my tests shouldn't have come back 100% neonatal lupus. Like, that's a really weird thing to come back. Like, it was ANA negative, but it came back still with like, it was very strange. But anyway, so like I had a lot of medical health issues. Again, that she like didn't believe, despite doctors' diagnoses and stuff. And then so I hadn't been able to save as much money as I wanted to, because a lot of my money went to food, and I'm on the medical cannabis program, and so, my medication that I would need to eat. Um, and she just like, go ahead and try. And at the time, so when I fled my marriage, I had tried to file for bankruptcy, but the attorney I used kind of didn't do his job properly. Unfortunately, I do have kind of documentation of this. Um, it's been really hard, because I know I have a really big lawsuit, but it's like, because I had a whistleblower case at one point against the former employers. I still do. I don't care about the money with that. I had, other stuff in my life. What's important is that the problem that how it impacts the legal system. That is the problem. I'm sorry. I'm all over the place. Today's been a very emotional day. I had been renting a car from Hire Car, and I had just gotten to the point of getting out of this, situation. For the majority of the last year, almost all of my money has been going to basically legal fees associated with an appeals case associated with this situation. Unfortunately, the car that I had been renting, I had to return it. I think it was like too much wear and tear on the car. Hi, whoever just joined me. I've been having one, I don't know if it's the same person. One person keeps jumping on and off. I don't want to, there you go. I don't want to scare people. Anyway, I had been, renting a car, and like, it was just too much wear and tear, and he put 4 tires on it. And then I had when I first rented the car 6 months prior, and then like I 2 tires ended up blowing, and it was just like a lot of stress. I could tell it was a lot of stress on him, because like I don't think he was expecting me to put 40,000, 50,000 miles on the car. So I returned it and I started renting another car, and it was an unsafe vehicle. And that owner actually like flat out lied to hire a car. They also refused to mark the rentals returned for 8 days, preventing me from being able to work. And I rented another car from hire car, which unfortunately had to go into the shop, and then there was a miscommunication, and it ended up being returned, and so I have like no money now. I have no idea. And the problem is, it's almost like people don't believe what's going on. And it's one of the most terrifying situations because I don't want to end up on the street. I really don't. I've been fighting to not end up on the street. But the weird thing is, I think that at one point there had been people stalking me, including former tenants of my second husband who owe him money. And the weird thing is, I feel like they want me on the street because at one point, prior to them moving in they moved in with me, and then they moved into my second husband's condo. Um, they had been themselves homeless, and it's almost like I feel like I can feel this hate from them for reasons I don't understand because I think they thought I had money. I've never had money. Like I've had my own. I've always worked, and unfortunately, because of how I was raised, um, I it was in one of those religious homes where it's like everything has to go to the men. So any relationship I would end up with, the guy I was seeing would get almost all of my money, um, pretty much. There was one relationship where that wasn't the case, and then my marriage, he ended up paying for some of my bills, but that was because of the fact that I became disabled right after we married. I had given up a 10-year career for him, and then I got a job and I ended up getting really sick and disabled. And yeah, I was on Aflac. That was pretty much how I survived until I was off Aflac. And then I ended up finding another job. But anyway, so in 2019, I moved into this house and like there were people immediately stalking me. And I remember, walking down the street and like there was a teenager that cat called me. And I had mentioned something about it at work because it was weird and it bothered me. And then when I moved in, like a couple days later, there were people outside of my house talking about me. It was very strange because I could hear them. Excuse me. Um, I could hear them through the walls because they're thin walls and like the street's right there, so I could hear them talk about. They talked about my dog. They talked about me. Um, it was almost like so there was someone who I had mentioned her in the video about alternative schools, which again you can find in the 3-hour video. She and we had been childhood friends. We really haven't been friends since 2004, and I deeply regret involving her in that video. To be honest, we hadn't really been talking much, but we had reconnected a little bit stronger while I was homeless after I fled my mom. And it wasn't until more recently that I recognized that it was likely because she's friends with my mom. Because growing up, she liked my mom better. That like my mom was nice to her. My mom, like, and I'm glad that my mom was nice to her. She needed the support, but they bonded in a way that like entirely invalidated my views. And it's really important to understand that um, because we can't invalidate people's abuse just because it's different than someone else's. No, we can't compare trauma. It's not. Um, anyway, sorry, I'm gonna go downstairs real quick. I need to get something to drink, so I apologize. 1 second. Okay. Sorry about that. All right. So I had kind of I feel like she'd come over to my house. Now I sincerely wish her the best. I really do. It's just like there were a lot of people who had, for whatever reason, power over my life that they shouldn't have. Like, there was one person who did not know that I had a whistleblower case against my former employers who actually may have gotten themselves way too involved in my personal life, to a point that they should not have been involved in my personal life. Like, I'm one of those people who needs to, I need to keep separate work and personal. Not only that, but I don't think they understood. I first off, they might have been trying to retaliate against me for not updating their social media, but I tried to keep telling them that what they wanted for their social media was not something that they should be doing. And it was hard for me to, like, I would keep bringing it up, but it was almost like I couldn't find the words. And at one point, I suggested if they really wanted to do that, they needed to find a marketing agency because of what the company was, and it's really not. Instagram's not a platform for that. Now, I had been using Instagram myself specifically as it was the only social media that I used. I did end up creating a Twitter because I had to at one point to try and get get out of this. But I had actually gotten out of Facebook because it's very damaging. It like becomes kind. It's we think we know everyone from what people post online, and it kind of eliminates the one-on-one, and people make assumptions. And so I got rid of Facebook. I had kept Instagram. I was using it as a tool to kind of relearn social skills after my divorce, and I don't think a lot of people understood that. But anyway, so I had one person, just like I don't think she knew about what was going on with work. She didn't know at the same time that my dad was in the hospital in Italy. She didn't know that at the same time, like, I had very limited income, very limited amount of money. I had just been spending $200 to $400 a week more than I was making while I was homeless because of the fact that I needed to rent a car to get to and from my job so that I wouldn't lose my job. My dog, I didn't for a while. I couldn't bring her into work with me, so I had no choice but to put her in doggy daycare. There was one I did end up having to get a hotel a couple times. So like I didn't have the money, and I would have slept in the car. I actually had planned to sleep in the car, and at the time I did have a Planet Fitness, subscription. So I would go. I had planned to sleep in the car, and then I could take a shower at Planet Fitness, and then at a certain point I was allowed to bring the dog to work. So it was like, okay, I would either take her to doggy daycare or I would take her to work and not spend the money at doggy daycare. But the car was a keyless entry. At a certain point, I did switch cars, and I wasn't, but it was like the last little bit. But for the most part, the car was a keyless entry, and so one of my fears was that, like, when you're in proximity of the car, you could open the door. So if I was asleep in the car and someone would open the door, like, I didn't want to deal with that. Like, that's a terrifying thought. So she didn't know that I didn't have the money to go to her wedding. Like, I couldn't afford to rent a car. I couldn't. I ended up going out the night before her wedding. I went to a comedy show. I did so because of the fact that there was so much. I sent this person, the person whose wedding I couldn't attend. Her fiance allowed me to stay at his house for about 2.5, 3 weeks. And it was on the market. I was like watching the house, what was on the market, and they were living in her house. So I was not trying to use her. At one point, she told me she gave me $100. I checked unless she gave me cash, which I do not think I don't remember her giving me cash. But I checked all of my my bank statements, my PayPal, my Venmo, and Cash App. She did not give me money. I don't know where she got that from. She did not give me money. But she did, have let me stay in her fiance's house. But even told him I was concerned that how my being there was impacting them, because she was very clearly showing signs of stress. And like at a certain point, it was just like, when my second husband and I got married, a couple of the things that really put a lot of stress on our relationship were someone gave me, agreed to watch someone's cats. And my ex didn't want to deal with that. I had agreed to watch someone's cats. And then I had the former tenants that were living with us. That happened. And it was almost like, again, he doesn't believe in communication. So, and I might not have even, I don't know, we just didn't talk about it. He's the type of person who doesn't believe in communication. He just wants stuff to happen, and then he'll explode and get angry because he thinks he's in the right. But the problem is, you need to speak your mind. You need to speak up. And if you're not able to speak up, then you need to tell me, listen, I have a problem speaking up. I'm really sorry. I need you to be aware of that, so that if we're in a situation, I need you to do me the favor and just kind of think on behalf of both of us. But we never had that conversation because he doesn't believe communication exists. But I knew how much those things put stress on my marriage, and I didn't want to do that to her marriage, especially they weren't even married yet. And I could sense it from her. I could sense it from them. So I told her I couldn't go to her wedding, and she didn't respond to me. And then she attacked me. She basically attacked me because she didn't respond to my text messages. And I told her, I'm like, dude, you have to trust me. Just trust me. I don't trust you. I lost my best friend. You're not my best friend, dude. If we were friends, we wouldn't be having this conversation. You would just trust me. Your best friend was Brody, who didn't want you dating the guy you ended up marrying. That's what it was. And dude, if we were best friends, then I wouldn't have spent 4 years every single day screaming at you to leave the abusive relationships you were in, because that's what it was. 4 years of my texting you just bitching to me about the abuse, and my telling you need to leave, you need to leave, you need to leave, and then just complaining for 4 years, 2 different relationships. If we had been friends, that wouldn't, dude, come on. So I had ended up going out to a comedy show. The day, I told her I couldn't go. She didn't respond. I went out to a comedy show. I'm not someone who normally drinks. I ended up having 2 glasses of wine. I then, in the bathroom, I may have ruined the set for people. I apologize. I made a comment about a sandwich. I don't think it ruined the set for many people. It might have ruined it for 1 person, 2 people, and I'm really, 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 really sorry if I did. Anyway. So I don't know why she just attacked me. Later on, someone started sending me these messages. Okay, back to where I was. The person, the childhood friend, former childhood friend, had come over to my house and started doing all this really weird shit. First off, she told me she was diagnosed with one condition, and then started exhibiting the symptoms and explaining schizophrenia. And she started going through all my belongings, kind of indicating what she liked and what she wanted for herself. I had been wearing a necklace. She grabbed my necklace and just kind of like a child would. And it was so strange, going through all my stuff, grabbing my things. She at one point asked me, we were so much we hadn't spoken in years, that she had asked me about my marriage to my second husband, and I tried to explain a little bit. And she told me, I meant, oh, I didn't know how to. We would have gone out to dinner. She had been drinking, and I don't really drink. I didn't drink. She had been drinking. She had actually complained that the drinks weren't strong enough. But then we came back here, and now again, if I didn't have a car, or I didn't have a car, if I had a car, I would have driven her home. She wouldn't have stayed here. That's how terrified I was of her that night. Like, it was just very, very odd. Some of the things she was saying. One of the things, basically, I had told her I had an emotional affair. It's not true. I didn't have an affair. I had made friends, and I had old friends. Like, I had met a person who, was just trying to help me get out of the situation. This is not like a romance. They were just giving me job suggestions. That's all that it was. There was another person that I've been friends with for many, many years. It was just simply the fact that I was talking with someone I'd been friends with for many, many, many years. Just talking to people was making him mad. He used to get mad at me for him developing feelings, and like I was like, it was more like I finally started feeling emotion again and recognized that I needed to escape. And I don't want to get into that right now. So I had told her that, and I used the term emotional affair. I didn't like, I do suffer from aphasia. And again, I was just so terrified, like I couldn't properly communicate. So I apologized for using the wrong term, but no, like she told me that I needed to be punished. And I didn't ask her to clarify. I was just like shocked. And I'm just kind of, this is so, so strange. So I didn't say anything. I just kind of was like, okay. And then the next day she had told me that giving birth, having a child was the best thing she ever did with her life. Now, she's a bio mom. Her child has been adopted. I don't know the details. It's none of my business. Again, we have not been friends since 2004. At one point she did tell me some stuff, but I don't know too much about it. But it was like that with what she said afterwards, very much red flags. She then asked me if I had ever considered having children. And I said, yes, there was only one person I'd ever really thought about it with. And her response is, well, you're never going to see him again. And I'm just like, what? It was very odd. And it was almost like pretty much after that happened, that was December 2019. After that happened, all of a sudden, all of this weird stuff started happening. All of this weird stuff started happening. It was almost like people, like I could feel people projecting on me. First off, it was like they were projecting that, hi, person who jumped on, people keep jumping on and off, so I'm just going to warn you. You may need a trigger warning. I am someone who's been trying to get out of a human trafficking situation for the last 2 years. This is going to be very intense. Watch at your own risk. I do appreciate you for being here. So anyway, it was just like, sorry, I lost my train of thought with, I apologize. Like all of this weird stuff started happening. Like I could feel like people were trying to project on me that I was an entirely different person. Like at first it was almost like, and again, I'm a highly intuitive person. I am a medium. I had been at that particular point in time working on, I was in the process of starting a business, doing like crystal healing and tarot reading and things of that nature. I stopped. I'm not going to that's not a path I've chosen to take anymore because of what's happened since I moved into this house. But like it was almost like I could sense and I could feel people projecting onto me as a 4-year-old, which is a weird. Now, me as a 4-year-old, when I was 4 years old, this they're trigger warning, so I am letting you know that now. When I was a child, I was a sexually abused child. And I also was a child who had been on, I spent when I was 8 months old, I'd been diagnosed with myoclonic seizures, but they never found any evidence of it. And they stopped after after a certain point, like I was put on phenobarbital and it didn't ever happen again. I was treated for 3 years on phenobarbital from the time I was 8 months old until like 2.5. So I guess 2 years. not 3 years. But um, now, with that being said, like the symptoms I didn't show again. I did actually experience them when I was 8, and then again they started in 2016 every now and then. It happens when I'm cold. But anyway, so sorry, I've lost my train of thought. Give me a second. This has been very overwhelming. Um, there's a lot. Um, I've entirely lost my train of thought there, so I do apologize. It's okay. It all ties in. Let me see if there's something else. Oh yeah. So I could sense everybody projecting on me, 4-year-old me. Now, 4-year-old me, a lot of what I would deal with was basically like I would try to express myself as a child, but I couldn't always communicate properly. And often, like, I was very, very sensitive, very emotional as a child as well. And I kind of was dealt with a lot from my parents for being too emotional as a child. Um, to the point where I just kind of had to like shut down. So and also I would either like act out or I would shut down. And it was like I was trying to learn how to socialize because again, those first 2.5 years were like think about the early developmental stages being on a barbiturate. Okay, like I had very limited social skills. I was trying to figure out how to be a person. You know, that's what children are sponges, and that's what we do when we're kids. We learn from the world around us how to act and behave. And as a child, like I didn't necessarily have, I had like a family who cared about me, but it wasn't necessarily what I needed given my medical issues, if that makes sense. Like I needed more support than I had, but it's not my parents' fault. It's just that at the not necessarily it might be. There are certain indications that in part it is, but there are certain indications that a lot of it had to do with that, we lived in the middle of nowhere in the 80s and like my doctor and this is a really important point, and again this may be very triggering for people. It's something that a lot of people haven't considered, but when I had vaginal tearing as a 3-year-old, and we went to the doctor and the doctor just kind of prescribed Desitin. And you have to, I think my doctor was in his 60s or 70s. Now in the late 80s, early 90s, you have, so that someone who was born in 1920 got his medical license during a period of time where things like vaginal stimulation of women and children was common, was like an actual medical practice. So you have to understand that they didn't necessarily understand what I was going through as a child because it was kind of just dismissed. And so when I could feel these people projecting on me, and I remember being called Pinocchio a lot as a child because I didn't know how to necessarily find and again, as an adult, I do suffer from aphasia. So they couldn't necessarily like find the words to explain what I was going through. And often like I would be punished for being emotional. So if and also weirdly enough, a lot of it revolved around food. Like I was often very hungry. And people would get mad at me for lying about like eating food. Um, or taking like cookies and stuff. But it was like I wasn't necessarily massively overweight. I was just really hungry. Anyway, sorry, my eyeball's itchy. I'm very fidgety right now. This has been a very, very emotional day. So I could feel like it wasn't necessarily like I was intentionally lying. It's just learning communication skills with all of the factors. So I could just in 2000, it was early 2020. I could just feel these people like projecting 4-year-old me on me, and it just like constantly hearing like I was calling me Pinocchio, and just like I when I was younger, I did have these issues, and it did continue. I want to say like there are definitely kids who likely remember when I was in the 2nd grade. They may have think I had like a made up boyfriend who I said was run over by a steamroller. So essentially, what I was trying, I didn't know how to explain it. I would say things like that to try and explain the inappropriate sexual attention I would get from adults. There had been a guy I had met at summer camp. His name was James. I think he was 17 and I was, what, 12? And we had stayed connected via instant messenger. And that was like, I didn't know how to explain and express as a child, like what I was going through, because like I thought it was normal. Like I remember being 12 years old and like going to, it was Eckerd at the time. It then became Rite Aid. Went to Eckerd and I was walking out of the pharmacy and there was like this 40-year-old guy that I had just left basketball practice. This 40-year-old guy walking in while I was walking. He's like, nice legs, baby. And I'm like 12 years old. Like there was we had our house was being built when I was, in the seventh. We were living in a family friend's basement for a while our house was being built. And because they had a kitchen, but it was just easier for my parents to, I guess, more cost effective and easier for my parents to, we would just go out to dinner to the same restaurant every night. And the restaurant that we would go to, it got to the point where there was this guy, his name was Eddie. I think he was like 20 in his early 20s, mid 20s. He stalked me. It got to the point every night we would go there, he would, wherever he was in the restaurant, he would stop and go to the salad making station and just watch me eat. And eventually, like, I like at a certain point, he like knew where I lived. Like he had seen me get off the bus. Now I had told my parents, and the response, and this is again, I think that there was a lot of toxic masculinity, because looking back, I think that if I were to have a conversation with my dad at least, he would probably apologize for this now. But back then, I brought it up to my dad and his response was, well, I can tell the owner, but this guy, you really want this guy to lose his job? Like, he just thinks you're pretty. And it's just like, as a child, how does one talk about this? And so I could, in 2019, it was like I could feel these people projecting on me, calling me a liar, and it's just like, no, it had gotten to a point in, I think I was 14, when I remember being away at a church event. We were in Maine. We used to go to Maine every summer to help build and demolish houses and things like that. And so most of my childhood, I actually didn't have, I had some friends and I'm very thankful for them, but the majority of my childhood, I actually spent observing the adults because I had such severe social skills. So I was very quiet and I would just sit and I would watch the adults because I wanted to learn how to be one, essentially. Like I remember, I think I was like 10 and I played bridge with the adults in Maine. Like that was the thing. I don't remember how to play bridge. It's been a very long time. But I remember I was as opposed to staying with my family, I ended up staying with like in the teen cabin. And one of the guys, it was not co-ed, but one of the guys that was dating someone who also was staying in the teen cabin I had a headache and I think I was napping, and he came in and he actually started like kind of attacking me and calling me a pathological liar because I refused to admit that I had thrown away the empty can of Ready Whip that they had all been planning to do whippets out of. Now I threw it away because of that, because and that's what I was the goody goody as a child. I was not invited out. I was the one that I was the one that people didn't really invite out because I was too responsible. And that was pretty much, at that point, I was so much in fear. Like I kind of, unless there's a point where my life has been threatened, or for whatever reason, like my brain grabs the wrong words, I do my very, very best not to lie. And it was because of that. And it's not something I've really told anyone. I mentioned it briefly in a previous video, but prior to that, that's not something I'd ever really mentioned before. So that happened, and then I felt people projecting at me, like it was either 13-year-old me or 16-year-old me, and that might have had to do with my second husband. Like my second husband, he didn't want me as an adult. We met on a website called Am I Hot? In 2002. I had been 16. He was either 18 or 19. Um, and when we reconnected, he had been fantasizing about 16-year-old me for 14 years. Well, the 16-year-old me he made up in his head. And it needs to be known that when he and I met, my boyfriend of over a year, had just committed suicide. I was the last person, to my knowledge. There may have been one other person who saw him before he passed away, but to my knowledge, I was the last person to see him alive. I remember we were intimate. And I told him I loved, like, we were at the point, like, we loved each other. It was something it had only been like 3 months that we had been saying it to each other, but he knew I loved him, and it was just one of those moments. Like, I remember him getting into his car, walking him to his car, and giving a hug and kiss, and just having this weird feeling. Sorry. I know it. 2020 was the 18th anniversary of his suicide. And I think a lot of people didn't know that I was really, 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 really seriously grieving. Because it was also the 13th anniversary of my aunt and uncle's plane crash. And it was just a lot was going on. And they're a week apart. The anniversaries are a week apart. My Phil's suicide was February 7th. And the plane crash was February 2nd. So they're days apart. But I remember him, like, just it was the weirdest feeling. But yeah. So my second husband, John, he had met me while I was a grieving widow, and essentially, and it needs to be known, like, legitimately, pretty much. What I've learned about myself after my aunt and uncle's plane crash is that I grieve through sex. Sorry. I'm demisexual, but it's not something I really knew until more recently, because I would end up in, like, I didn't really have the opportunity to grieve Phil's loss, but I would end up in these relationships where I would meet someone, and, like, so immediately after he passed away, this guy I had been I had been involved in chat rooms and stuff online. He, like, immediately proposed to me, and we just, like, had this long distance relationship. Again, I had not properly grieved, but there was, like, we saw each other twice, so it was not like anything there. But then after that, like, I would end up in these relationships where it was just like I would go out with someone, and they would immediately tell me they loved me, and then we were in a relationship for like a year or 2 years. I didn't have, if I had had the support. Sorry, I don't really want to talk about this right now. But in 2019, 20, early 2020, that's what I was feeling. Like, people were trying to, almost like it was like trying to regress me into being this fictionalized person that my second husband wanted me to be. It was this very strange thing. There were a lot of things going on, some stuff that I can't talk about, because I do need an attorney. But no, like, at one point, so while this was going on, one of the things when I was a child, like 4, when I felt like I was being regressed to 4, one of the things that kids hated. So I grew up, my dad had been an attorney. I don't know if he ever passed the bar. He just went to law school. He did tell me he was a lobbyist. I don't know too much about that. I just knew that he worked for a specific company for the majority of his career, and then he owned his own business, and then worked for a specific company. But I had uncles that were attorneys, and so as a child, like I would I would constantly tell people, like, catch them for breaking the law, and tell them to get an attorney. And what was happening was I it was like so I'm on the medical cannabis program, and when I moved into this house, there are some weird things that were happening, and I started having a reaction to my medical cannabis that I'd never had before. I've only been on cannabis since 2015, 2016. I was not really someone to do drugs prior to that, so very few people have ever seen me on cannabis. A few have, but like maybe 7 max, like not very many people. And other than that, I think I've only done, mushrooms, which are they're medicine. This is not like, um, but I was having this weird reaction to it. And it was like, I I also likely had a stroke in 2019, which there's a lot of documentation, and I at one point I didn't tell anybody because I did at one point have a medical malpractice suit. I might not anymore. I don't know. There are statutes of limitations, but again, I've been stuck. I've been trying to get out of what started as a trafficking situation for 2 years. So I know there are some rare situations where the statutes can be, anyway. Um, so it was like I was trying to explain that I needed help in finding an attorney, and that there was stuff going on that other people might need an attorney, that like my intuition was like going off, like there's something going on, something going on, something going on. But as opposed to either having a FaceTime or like a visual conversation or on the phone, nearly everything, all the communication I was having with people was through texts. And again, no one has ever really seen me on cannabis before, so very few people knew that's what was going on. They also didn't know that there were other things that were impacting me that, again, I can't speak about without an attorney because of what they are. But at one point, I had asked several people for assistance, and they just started attacking me. Like, why do I need an attorney? Blah, blah, blah. Like, no, I'm trying to explain, like, these things are going, and they just start attacking me. And it's just like, as opposed to have it, like, go fuck yourself up. And I'm like, all I could do was take photos and post them because my phone had at one point been, I'm fairly certain it was hacked. Based off, first off, my mom's computer had been hacked many years ago, but also there are indications that my phone had been hacked, including contacts being changed, and just certain things going on. So I started using Instagram again. It was my only form of social media. I didn't want to open any other social medias because I try to stay off of social media to begin with, but I was kind of forced onto it. I had been using Instagram for date and timestamps because it's vitally important. Certain things need date and timestamps, especially if your phone's been compromised, because things can be edited or changed, like especially with notes. If you're in the notes and you like go back and you edit the notes, like it changes the date. Like, yes, there's likely a log in the phone that stores like when things were changed. I don't know exactly how much that in detail Apple goes with their logs, but there possibly is one. There might not be. I don't know. But date and timestamps, being that on Instagram, very, very, very important. So it was like one of the person who started telling me to go fuck myself. What happened? Like I had posted, like something happened. She sent me a message. I had blocked her. On Instagram. The message she sent me was I don't know why she sent it, but I like screenshot it and I posted it on Instagram for date and timestamp purposes because I'm like, there's something there's something going on. I need to record this. And it's almost like she either had people spying on me or had created a secondary account that she had notifications selected for me, because it was the moment she was blocked. It was the moment that I posted it that she sent me a text message. Why you didn't have my consent to post it? Take it down. And I'm just like, dude, what the like you're blocked. Not only that, but your name's not anywhere in there. No one's like, I'm the only person that knows that this is you. Like, there's a reason, like, what in the fuck is going on? I told you you might need an attorney. There is a reason. I'm basically saying I also need an attorney. I need help finding an attorney. But as opposed to having this conversation, it was just, fuck you. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, people were calling the cops on me, holding me hostage in my house, like thinking, like, for wellness checks. I didn't need a wellness check. What I needed was someone to listen and understand, yes, I'm going through a trafficking situation. There are other things that are going on, including my former employers the office manager who bragged about all of her friends being the cops. If the cops are showing up at my house, is this retaliation? Because there are laws in place to protect whistleblowers. Like, what in the fuck? Like, you can't hold. How I can't. And the fact, like, so many things going on. I was going to, that particular individual, it needs to be noted, she started attacking me because I started tagging someone, herself not understanding that, first off, again, I had a stroke. I was having an issue with my medication. Again, I'm on medical cannabis and I'm on Synthroid. Right now, I'm just on Synthroid. I'm not on medical cannabis today. It's been about 2 weeks that I've been off of it. Specifically because, again, I had that issue with the hire car, and that owner just like totally fucking me up and refusing to mark the car as returned, just eliminating the progress I've made the last year, 2 years. So like I'm out of medication. I have I've probably lost. I think because I've been drinking a lot of sugar. I've been able to put a little bit back on, but I think I lost 10 pounds in the last week. Sorry. I'm very grateful for Aldi. This pineapple juice is less than $4. I am able to afford it right now. I'm very thankful for that. Sorry, I just totally lost track of where I was. Oh yeah. So right now I'm not on cannabis. It's been like 2 weeks that I've been off of it. It's been a little difficult because I have lost weight. I haven't been able to eat, and I do have issues with sleep. So I may end up going to sleep and then waking up in like 3 hours and making another video. I don't know. But that's what happens. It's like anyway, and that's just it. Like very few people have seen me high. So like, why are you and so she started attacking me because I started tagging a certain individual. That individual, I don't know for certain, but I'm about 85% sure they know my former employers, and or at least like not like very personally, but like in passing. So and this particular individual started screaming, so and so, they're not your, like, what did she say? Stop blaming blah blah blah. Stop blaming them for your problems. And it was just like, no, I'm not blaming them for my problems. You're not even taking the time to talk to me. And it's almost like I don't know if it started when I tried to explain to her issues with my first husband. And it was almost just like, I don't know, are you intentionally trying to protect people who shouldn't be protected? Like, I was going to name names. I'm not going to in this video. I think that I think that I should refrain from doing that right now. Specifically because, again, I don't want to cause drama. Drama, I think I said trauma. I don't want to cause drama. I'm not someone. So when I was like 4, I may have wanted to be an actor. Things have happened since then. I don't like attention. I was on a TV show in Canada. It was a reality TV series about behind the scenes of bands having photo shoots. So while I was on camera, I was doing my job as a makeup artist. It wasn't like it was I was acting. There was an earthquake in Japan about 20 minutes ago. Anyway, um, it wasn't like I was acting. Like I got to, I think at a certain point, um, I had been so shamed by my mom for and again, she meant well by this. When I was a child, she did take me to a lot of like the modeling and acting like casting searches because I wanted to do that as a child. But what she would do is she would use that as an opportunity to shame me and ask the casting person or the scout, the talent scout, okay, well, she wants to get a tattoo. That's not gonna make sure she's aware how much that will impact her. And you're not looking for people with tattoos, right? That's a bad idea, right? Like try I- so it got to a point where I was just like, you know what? I don't like the attention. I don't want to act. So I don't know if people were like trying to say that my being honest and speaking out about what I went through starting to speak out what I went through in childhood, was my acting. Because no, I'm not. I don't want to act. I don't want that. That's not me. I've grown into me. I, you know, I had no problem with the reality show because it was just me being me and doing my job. It was unscripted. I need to adjust my chair. This is my one. I do have chairs with a dining table, but this is my one chair. So and that's it. Fix it. Oh, okay. But yeah, like that was like I'm not an actor. I have a Mandy account. I've been on Mandy since like 2008 when it was a very different website and it was for like actors as well, but also a lot of crew. It has changed quite a bit. I don't use it anymore. I don't think I've taken down the account. And I had in 2019 submit myself to a casting call for Army of Dead. I think that's what it's called. But it wasn't because I wanted to act. I had just wanted to be like a nameless zombie background. That was it. That's all I wanted was to be zombie backgrounds. Because I went to school for makeup, special effects, and I miss that. I miss being in the industry, but I don't want the attention. So I don't like a bunch of weird stuff started after I had submitted to that casting call. So I don't know if like they submit me to anything else. Because I didn't. I just wanted to be nameless zombie, like unrecognizable zombie background. That was what I. Anyway, so like I don't know why, like, and the person that I had reached out for help, she's former military. So I don't know why she started like attacking me the way she did. And like, I had told her at one point that she could lose her kid. And I think she thought I was threatening her, but it's just like, no, no, no. There are outside, like, we needed to talk, dude. There are outside influencing factors that we like. So now I don't know what has been going on if people have been slandering me because at one point, again, the person whose wedding I went from a yes to a no, and she herself chose not to respond to my telling her I could no longer go to her wedding, and then attacked me because she chose not to respond to it. And at a certain point, one of her friends, someone I know but I'm not friends with, like we probably spent a grand total of 7 hours together in the same room at the same time. Um, Started posting on my Instagram, like, what happened to the sweet girl I went to high school with? Well, first off, we did not go to high school together. We met through a mutual friend. We did not attend high school together because I think I started talking about, I went to an alternative. I went the first half of my freshman year, I went to regular high school. But there were things that were going on that it was so much, I just kind of stopped functioning. I got straight A's in French and in choir. Everything else, I kind of failed. I ended up with a 1.7 GPA. I ended up going to a different school. But then, what was it, sophomore and junior year, I did attend the home high school for one class a day, first thing in the morning, electives. And then senior year, I ended up going back full time for electives and cosmetology. But so this person's like, oh, well, yeah, what happened to the sweet girl I went to high school with? Dude, I didn't go to high school with you. We thought we were gonna hurt yourself. When have I ever been self-harming? When have I ever hurt myself? I'm not a cutter. I did recently burn myself, with like getting something out of the stove. That's a burn. I've never, now I have to admit that, as a child, there were instances where I would threaten to kill myself, not because I actually would, and I need to be very honest. Again, trigger warning. I'm very sorry. Not because I actually would, but because I was not allowed to have boundaries. My parents did not see. I would constantly hear children don't have constitutional rights. So like I wasn't allowed to stand up for myself. And so it got to a point where if there was something that it was like so bad, like I didn't know until 2017 that I had anxiety. I was misdiagnosed in childhood. A lot of it was anxiety, that I had actually been self-medicating with cigarettes. Now, um, like there were certain situations where I remember summer camp. There was a summer camp I went to once, and there ended up being a camp counselor who I had attended a different summer camp with, as a camper. And this guy actually started having relationships with some of the campers. And it was not okay. Oh, sorry, I gotta crack my neck. And I remember going to the summer camp like a couple weeks after he was fired for having relationships with campers. But I remember going back to the summer camp and just ending up getting like this massive anxiety, and I couldn't be there. I also, at the time, I remember I had a yeast infection. I was 13 years old. This was like, we didn't talk about that stuff at my house. So I like suffered with the yeast. I remember going, and again, this is really, might upset some people, so I apologize. I remember going online and looking up like home remedies on how to take care of yeast infections. And one of the things was garlic. So I remember like following these instructions on like taking a piece of dental floss and wrapping it around raw garlic and inserting it inside of myself. And I remember going to summer camp with freaking garlic and fucking tooth floss, like floss. But I remember the anxiety I had was like so, like I was like shaking like this, and to the point where like I there was something like my intuition was like going off, like something's wrong, like I can't be here, to the point where like I had my only no my parents were like, no, we're not picking you up, you're not, no, you have to stay there. And I'm like having like I could feel my like palpitations, and I'm like I can't, I will not, I can't be here, this is not like a healthy place for me, I have to go. And like it was situations like that where, again, I didn't know I had that was anxiety, um, but I didn't have any choice. At least as a child, I didn't see any other choice, because the only time I was ever taken seriously by my parents was if I were to threaten, that I would kill myself. And it's a really unfortunate that that was the point that it had gotten to in my, like, thought so little of me that the only time they would listen to me is when I would threaten that. So where is this person getting that I would harm myself? Because when have I ever harmed myself? When? I would like to know. Who is making, now, are you making these things up because the high school that I attended has a teacher that is like the childhood best friend of my first husband? Because she and I don't know each other. We like met once or twice in passing, but the fact he and her used to date. So like she was not involved in our lives. So like it was weird because he would like constantly talk about her in ways that it was inappropriate, but sorry. Hmm. Anyway, um, so um, I'm going to stop talking about that. Was 2020. There were a lot of other things going on. Um, Also, I need to say this because I did email a couple people. I did message a couple people today. This is something that I don't know if many people knew. Um, but my first husband had actually been engaged to someone else while we were still married. He and I, first off, he and I would not have gotten married had my mom not insisted that I was not allowed to go to school without marrying him. Um, she was helping me pay for. First off, I was made very much aware that the only reason I was going to school was that my 4 years younger brother had gotten a scholarship. Now, I had been working since the age of 15. And I went to cosmetology school. I got my hair license. I wanted to go to special effects makeup school. I had been looking for loans on my own. It's just that at that point, like I needed a cosigner, and it was like I didn't, you know, so my parents helped me out going to school, but and I had just met this guy. And like legitimately, I had just met this guy. My aunt and uncle died in a plane crash. And again, I have a tendency to kind of grieve through being physical. It wasn't that I had wanted to be physical with him. And I have to say that because he and I met, he actually had been stalking me on MySpace. I had told him I didn't want to go out with him, and he asked me a second time, and it triggered me because I had just escaped a very abusive relationship. Which, by the way, that same person ended up having a child with my first husband's cousin, quite possibly because I don't know. Hi, there's another person who jumped on. I'm just gonna let you know if you need a trigger warning, there's a trigger warning. Um, I don't know how much in depth I'm gonna get into things, but right now I'm talking about exes, so just be prepared. So anyway, and thank you for joining. If anybody wants to say anything, you're more than welcome to. If not, I totally understand. So let me see if I can get back to my train of thought here. I apologize. Again, it's been a very, very emotional day. I don't know if I mentioned this. I think I mentioned it to the first person who jumped on that I've been renting a car through hire car to get out of. I've been in what started as a labor traffic or a form of human trafficking, which I know I'm going to get into that in a minute about how I got in here. But so I had actually gotten to the point where I was almost able to get out, and I had to switch cars, and the car I had switched into was unsafe. The owner refused to mark it as returned for 8 days, and then this car I was able to get into, there was a miscommunication. The owner was wonderful. Nothing. The second car, no problem. Like with the owner, it needed to go into the shop, and then there was miscommunication, and now I have no, not miscommunication with him. With just again. So now I don't know what I'm going to do. I had $30. I had to get food for my dog and my cat. They're my kids. They needed food. So now I think I have like $15 left. I don't know how I'm going to pay my cell phone bill. At least Verizon's like, I should be okay for a few weeks because it's not due until the 1st. But when I called, I think they said like, by the end of May, there might be a problem. But at least initially I should be okay. And I'm praying anyway. So, yeah, I didn't, my ex and I, he had been stalking me on MySpace. He waited until it went from being in a relationship to single, and then like asked me out to a bar. At which point I actually told him no. I said that I wasn't interested and that I didn't drink and that my ex had been an alcoholic and I didn't want to go to a bar. And then he asked me again, and it just kind of like, okay, I guess I'm not allowed to say no. Um, and so I went out. I actually, the very first thing I remember thinking when I saw him was, well, he's not Eric. I guess he's okay. Um, and that was that. He proposed. He gave me a promise ring after 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, or no, he gave me a promise ring after a month. I think it was after 2 weeks. No, it was 3 weeks. It was 3 weeks because after 2 weeks, my aunt and uncle passed away in a plane crash. It was after the first week. My one uncle ended up having emergency aortic valve replacement surgery. A week later, my other uncle and my aunt passed away in a plane crash. And then shortly after that, he gave me a promise ring, and then he proposed to me. And then I had told him actually that if he was going to be in my life, I was planning on moving to Canada to go to school, and then he proposed to me, and he just used me to go to Canada essentially because he was cheating on me. And the person he was cheating on me with was way more attractive, and he like had been talking, like, he had wanted her for so long, and it's just like, dude, like, um he used me, and the thing is, he came from like a multimillionaire family, and like his mom threw fucking temper tantrum that her dad paid $1 million for her wedding, but my parents could barely afford the $10,000 for mine. And then he went and he invited 50 extra people and spent an extra $4,000, cost an extra $4,000 in catering. Like, had my mom not insisted that no daughter of hers was going to live in Canada unmarried, and just given me that time to, I was what, 20, 21, 22, like giving me that time. Yeah, I was 21. I had turned 22 after we got married. Like, make my own decisions as an adult. We would have broken up. He would not have come with me to Canada. She would have spent way less money because it would have just been me. She wouldn't have also been supporting him, which, by the way, he should have been the one supporting him. I don't know why she was the one that supported him, but he should have been the one supporting him. That was one of the reasons we got married, was so that he could end up getting a work permit, which he did get, but he never worked. He just sat on MySpace all day and masturbated. Like, that's all that he did. And then would refuse to even hold my hand or kiss me, but then complain about all the people he wasn't having sex with. Like, he didn't want to marry me. He just used me. And I didn't have the money. Like, I ended up filing for bankruptcy after we divorced because, again, like, that was just, anyway. Sorry. But I don't know if what I was experiencing in 2020 was because his childhood, like his friends and ex teaches at the high school that I kind of went to, like, took a few classes at, but didn't actually really attend. Now I don't know, but she doesn't know me. We didn't talk, and the thing with me is, I've been in so many of you, like, the I have such severe issues with social skills. My talking like this is not a normal thing. When I first meet someone, I'm typically just very quiet. I just sit there very quietly. And it's when I finally start to, like, feel comfortable, like, I spend the time observing. And it's, oh, sorry, oh, there's another person. Hello, other person. I'm going to warn you, just like the first two people, if you require a trigger warning, this may be triggering. I have been doing my best to get out of what started as a trafficking form of human trafficking for the last 2 years. I'm going to get into how that happened and what it was exactly in just a moment. But I want you to know that, in case you do want the option to leave, because I don't want to force anybody to watch this. But essentially, and I do apologize, there will be a lot of armpit hair. One of the things I stopped shaving after I moved into this house. I think one of the reasons is because, at least it occurred to me, like, why do we're born with hair, like we grow hair as we age. Why is it that we shave? Is it to look like children? And one of I don't want to look like a child. I already look young enough. I'm going to be 37 this year. Up until actually even like a year and a half ago, I was still getting hit on by like 17 and 18-year-olds. So I think I need all of the hair that I can have at this point. And it's someone's laughing. I'm sorry. I'm very intuitive, so someone is laughing at that. I'm sorry. Um, I appreciate your laughter because I needed that. But no, I'll take all the hair. See, but yeah, like the back of my legs don't grow hair, but the front do. So if you want to give the back of my legs hair, go for it. Um, okay, so, so someone, I can feel someone laughing at that. I'm really sorry. Okay, thank you. I really needed that laughter after today. Okay. Um, so I think I did start off the video by talking about this. I'm going to get into it again. And for anyone who's ends up watching this at a later time and sees this multiple times, I'm sorry. So essentially, in 2019, I had been living with my mom and her husband temporarily after fleeing my second husband. Again, that the marriage with my second husband, I have discussed it in some of the videos. I don't want to go too in depth because of the fact that, again, I'm not trying to cause or bring about any harm to anyone. I am, however, going to speak out about the situations that I've been in and what I experienced. And, he didn't notice I had lost over 50 pounds until pants were falling off of me and I'm walking around the house with my pants falling off. Like I was medically neglected and he would get mad at me, for like how dare I want emotional support, So I had fled that. And unfortunately, again, for whatever reason, as opposed to making sure I had a divorce attorney, my mom bought, she did need a house. She and her husband, their lease was up. They were living in a 55 plus community. And when she bought her house, the initial intent was I was going to be allowed to bring all three of my dogs. It was only after they purchased the home that they found out that there was a pet restriction. So we couldn't have 5 dogs, which unfortunate because I miss my other 2 kids so very, very much. And Ruby, she went downstairs now. She's not up here anymore. I think I disturbed her because I took her chair. But so I had been living with my mom and her husband. It was meant to be temporary. I was dealing with health issues, and it took me a little while to find a job after I moved because the job that I hadn't been paying all of my bills, and I like that I went from being 10 minutes away to being an hour away, and my car was a lease, and I had also started driving for Lyft, so I was like putting all of these miles on it. And it was just I did end up purchasing the car. So that was okay, but it was just like the amount of my income was way less than my bills, which again, my ex should have been paying for that. But there were other things going on that I thought I would be okay. Because I thought I was at one point an heir in an estate, which has since settled. However, it cut 4 of the beneficiaries out. Now, I don't know any of the details because they like closed it off. But I do know that at least 3 of us did not have proper legal representation. At least one person did end up getting legal representation at a certain point, but at least 3 of us, that might have been all 4 of us, but at least 3 of us did not have any legal representation. So I had been under the impression that I would be okay because there was this supposed to, be distributed, and it did not. Now, again, had I had legal representation, I actually would have asked to be removed from the estate in entirety. But it is what it is. I had been living with her, and she is a church treasurer, and he is a co-pastor at a church that I myself have not been to. But I do know she has. I witnessed a church meeting at the house. I've met congregation members, but I also, saw a church meeting at the house, where she went over the demographic and said that it's like 7% Caucasian and 93% minority. And essentially, I caught them and called them out on their racism. And well, it's an ism. I might not be using the right word. She's definitely he's anti-Semitic, and I have heard him make racist comments before. She herself does have some issues with racism. She might not know. And again, I'm very seriously. I want to apologize right now if I'm not using the right words. Again, this has been very being in this situation. I feel like I have intellectually regressed a bit. So and again, with aphasia, I may not be phrasing things properly. And so I sincerely apologize if I'm not expressing myself in a manner. But the most important thing is the lives of the individuals who they have negatively impacted. And they might not see it as negatively impacted, but since I've like my mom ended up involving people in stalking me. And at a certain point, I actually their email exchanges where I've basically laid it out for her with all of the issues, all of the things, and certain points where she's like broken the law and then involved other people in her harassment and stalking of me. And her response to that is, gee, I'm really sorry you feel that way, but I'm more concerned that my feelings are hurt. And it's just like, what? Like you're manipulating, controlling people to maintain power over them. And I caught them and I called them out and I recorded it because basically I asked them, how was church one day, and she was like, it was good, and his response was, for the white people. I was like, what? Oh yeah, church was good for the white people because there were so many Spanish people. He felt like he was in the Caribbean. No, I had misheard him. I thought he said brown because he said white people. He meant it. It's not what he said. He said Spanish, and I will admit that I misheard. And I someone just dropped off, so I apologize. But this is reality. This is real life. I had misheard, and but no, he said that's what he meant. It's what he meant. So I caught them and I called them out on it, and like my mom threatened my life. Essentially, she told me to just go ahead and try to leave. Well, the to leave was implied. I'm not going to scream. I've screamed in another video. You can hear it. But her response was, I'm going to tell you what I told you when you were 12 years old and you wanted to run away from home. Just go ahead and try. And it's just like, I'm an adult. Go ahead and try to leave. Like, go ahead and try to leave. That is a threat. And then she followed through with the threat, and as one of the people who was using the police to hold me hostage in my own home. I couldn't leave to work. I need to make money to pay the bills, and you are keeping me hostage in my house. Like, at one point, I think she actually may have reached out to my former employers, whom I had the whistleblower case against. I don't... Anyway, so I ended this particular property. I met the owner's brother on Tinder, and to be honest, he was not someone I had planned on meeting at all. I had already met someone on Bumble who I had been very happy with. We had hi, there's another person who jumped on. I don't know if you're the person who just jumped off. If you are, welcome back. If you are not, trigger warning if you need it. I do sincerely apologize. I am now getting into how a trafficking situation. So I'm just letting you know. So I had met him on Tinder, and again, I had his brother. I met the landlord's brother on Tinder, and I had no intention of meeting him, none. We had been talking, like I was using it to relearn social skills essentially because I had been so like messed up from my marriage, and I had very few friends. And one of the goals that I had planned when I moved into my mom's was to start being social again. But I really had a hard time because of the fact that like my mom thought I was gonna be like 12 years old again, and she was suddenly going to be two people just dropped off. Suddenly going to be someone came back. That it was just gonna be like I was 12 again. And like she it was very hard. So I had at one point tried there's like the networking friends building aspect to Bumble, and I did try that. But I have a really hard time with I don't do well with apps, and I think it has to do with my childhood and how I spent a lot of my teenage years online. And I would I was talk with a lot of older men when I was a teenager, and I was very like easily manipulated as a child. And I think like I had been regressed by my ex-husband because he wanted 16-year-old me that he had made up in his head. So I had been like super regressed and was just like not in a healthy place. I shouldn't have been dating at all. But again, I had no intention of meeting him. He like we basically just connected on the fact that I like Gundam and so does he, and that was pretty much it. So when like and again, I had already been seeing someone else, and the guy that I was seeing, I essentially told him that I wanted something non-monogamous, and it wasn't for me, it was really for him. And we didn't have an in-depth conversation about it, but it was essentially because of what I went through with my ex-husband and how I like it was the basically like I got sick 5 days after we got married, and it was like he hated me for being sick, despite the fact that he wanted me on his health insurance, and that's one of the reasons we got married. I had health insurance, but he kept saying like he wanted me on his health insurance, and then he like attacked me for being sick. So and I didn't think it was like I wanted to have a healthy relationship, and I didn't think it was healthy to like commit to something very serious right away. And so he and I never really had a conversation about it, which we should have. But that's what it is. So anyway, the landlord's brother, the first time like he knew that I wasn't interested in dating him. So the first time that he had messaged me, my phone actually started playing a song that is not in my iTunes library, nor that I had ever heard before. It was very odd. Um, and like the way certain things would be phrased would be very manipulative. So like I had a hard time navigating the conversations. But eventually I kind of worked it to the point where I just like would stop. I just kind of stopped talking to him and was like distancing myself because I didn't know how to say no. Like I was at a point where I could really only ghost people at that point. Like it wasn't necessarily intentional. It was just I didn't have the ability. Like I was so damaged. I was still recovering. Um, and I had got to a point where I had really like we would almost completely stop talking. And then I had a major medical event that involved a lot of it involved that medical issue I had as a child essentially. I ended up having a 2-hour episode of full body flailing that also included my head and neck. And it wasn't mentioned at the emergency room, but I do have 3 surgical clips in my neck from my thyroid surgery. And I had actually just started a job. I had taken a data conversion job from the company that I had left because it was too far of a commute. And I had to quit it because anytime I would look at the computer, I would like get all of these spots and feel like start to vomit. And as opposed to it taking 30 seconds for me to do an entry, it was taking 4 minutes. So I had I had a lot of brain fog. I was not in the best place. And this guy just he didn't he was like, I think now is the time to meet. And I didn't I wasn't 100% in myself. He waited until I was vulnerable. And anyway, even the first time we had sex, he essentially told me, he's like, "Oh, I thought you said you weren't gonna have sex with me." And it was pretty much like, I was thinking that the entire time. I didn't want it. This is not I keep telling you I have brain fog. I have brain fog. That's all the only thing I communicate. I was frozen in my head, screaming. But I anyway, I was eventually able to get that to stop, to end that. We stayed friends, and it needs to be known, he would insult me while he was inside of me, and I apologize if this is triggering, but he would basically complain things like I wasn't thick enough, or I wasn't it's just all these things, and it's just what in the fuck? And it's not that I wanted it. It's I kept telling you I have brain fog. I have brain fog. I was not in a good position to be making decisions for myself, and it wasn't a psychiatric thing. This was a neurological and a cognitive thing, and I didn't have the assistance and support that I needed in my life at that point. So I was not necessarily, because my mom, who again, I was temporarily living with her, she herself was starting to show the signs of dementia. And even when I started working at the job that office job that I ended up working at prior to moving in here, she for whatever reason thought if I brought her to work they would hire her, and kept insisting that I bring her to work. And it's just why? And her husband was enabling it. I'm like, if you want a job, there are other places hiring me. We can commute together, but I'm not bringing you to work. No, they'll hire me. You should bring me to work. I'm like, why do you think they'll what do you think I do? Why do you think they'll hire you? They're not hiring. They can't afford to hire another person right now. What? Why do you think they'll hire you? Oh, sorry. Anyway, so in March 2019, the guy I met on Tinder, I'm not naming names again. We had stopped, we had just maintained a friendship. That was it. That was at least I thought was a friendship. And I have to go, when I was a kid, again, all I experienced was inappropriate sexual attention from men. So even while I was regressed into, still dealing with having been regressed into what my second husband wanted, and my mom wanted me to be a child again. So it was just I was kind of not 100%. But anyway, so his that had ended, and his brother, he's like, yeah, my brother, he was designing a logo for his brother's home flipping business, I'm sorry, general contracting business. And he asked me he said his brother was looking for someone to paint countertops to look like marble. And I've almost been doing this for 2 hours. I'm getting very sleepy. It is 10 o'clock at night. I'm going to finish this bit right now, just to explain how I met the landlord, and then I think I'm going to go to bed. And then maybe to talk more. But a lot of this has already been covered, so at least in some of my other videos. So at least I know that it does exist, and I do appreciate to those who watched tonight, and for whoever's still watching. I did this live. I think it's important to know that this is real. This is not acting. Anyway, and I'm still alive at this point, which I am very thankful for. But so anyway, he invited me to, see a property. It was not this one. Oh, excuse me. However, I did see this one at a later date as a work site. Um, so I had ended up doing pouring epoxy countertops on one property, and when I went to that property, it's like he wouldn't let me do prep or finish work. So someone else just jumped on. Hi, I'm actually just about to wrap up, but I will let you know in case you're new and joining this. Trigger warning if you need it. I do have armpit hair, and I am actually just kind of talking about how I met the individual who lured me into this situation. So again, if you do need a trigger warning, otherwise I am going to try and end this because it is late and I feel like I'm falling asleep. But I did, there are some points, and then I will do another video maybe tomorrow. Anyway, so he wouldn't let me do prep or finish work. And it was weird. Like I had brought a rolling toolbox to a work site and he started making fun of me. And like, why would you make fun of someone bringing tools to a work site with a rolling toolbox? It was just very odd. But yeah, had I done let me see. I'm gonna pull up the photos so you can see countertops. I ended up pouring them 3 times. And again, it was because I wasn't allowed to do the prep or finish work. Had I been allowed to do the prep or finish work, chances are I would have poured it once. I might have done a second coat, but I likely would have just done it once. Because a lot of what happened is the counters, he had just like put pieces, I think they were just like pieces of plywood or not plywood, but like pieces of board that were then like he called them countertop. I don't think that's what it was. It was anyway. And you'll see it. Hold on. Here we go. So yeah, here we go. So if I had, there was like an L-shaped piece and then a floating island. So you can see, I don't know, there's a lot of glare there. Let me see if I can fix the glare. There you go. So that was the floating piece that I did. And I don't remember, is that the finished piece or is that the, because I did it 3 times. Yeah, that was the finished piece. So we did that one. And then here's and then you can kind of see like the other countertop. But you can see how the edges, it's like a board. It's not soft and like, so everything was just like falling off. But if I had been able to do the countertops properly, I would have built it up and like it would have been very different. Like made a little reservoir, so stuff that like it would have been very different had I been allowed to do prep and finish work. Anyway, so that's how I met him, and I did work on that property, and I didn't get to see the house finished. I just worked in the kitchen and just poured. Now, when people are pouring like I don't know if you've ever worked with epoxy, but it's very sticky. I had been wearing very form-fitting clothing, and again, like I've lost a lot of weight. I'm not used to attention, but like so I had been wearing like very form-fitting clothing like this, and it was almost like he and his crew were just like using it as an excuse, like a couple of guys just like to watch me. And then after the event, he like invited me for entertainment, which was strippers and alcohol. And again, I'm very much a supporter of people who do strip and dance and what appeal, whatever you would like to refer it to. I'm very much a big supporter, but being invited to a vacant property like with this guy, like I was very concerned. From like I felt uncomfortable that he invited me. And again, I am very tired right now, so that may have come off very odd. Anyway, and I need to note that because like at one point his brother was trying to get me to be a stripper, and at one point his brother thought I was going to do porn. So like this is like they kind of invited, like lured me into this thinking, like essentially I was put. Again, we'll get into more, but essentially, I was lured into this property while I was homeless, with promises of work, and like while I still did have the other job. And again, there were so many other things going on. Like I knew I had been working on bringing up. I didn't see the full extent of what was going on at that job until I got here, and I was like away from my mom, kind of wanting to be involved in everything. And I could finally like take a breather and see what was going on and just be like, oh, like when I started at the other job, a desk office job that I was working, I was kind of brought in to take over department and like just reorganize it and turn things over. And I did. And it was just like there were so many things going on. I didn't necessarily see what was happening until after like we moved locations, and it had been about there were certain things initially, but it took like 6 or 7, 8 months for me to like start to really see what was going on, or at least like get an idea of some of the issues and stuff. But again, there were certain flags right away that I did talk to them about. But anyway, so I think I am going to end this right now. It's been almost 2 hours. I, I appreciate you so much for the people who've been watching. Thank you so much, and anybody who just watches in the future, thank you. I appreciate your time. I will likely do another video tomorrow. Again, at this point I don't know what to do without having. I'm essentially waiting for the refunds from one car, and then I am fighting for refunds from this guy. Is like flat out lying. Like he claims that I was in one location and I was 20 miles away. And anyway, it's been terrifying because I had like a lot of the assistance programs, you need to prove steady and stable employment in order for them to like help you with the first months in security deposit, and that's all I need. First months in security deposit, and then I'm fine. But it's the fact that everything I'd been putting into court fees, and like and then that guy just did it anyway. Anyway, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm gonna do this tomorrow and kind of get more into it, I guess. I don't know what time, but at some point. Anyway, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you. I sincerely hope that I haven't, triggered or harmed anybody, because that's not my intent. If you would like to help in any way, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you so much. Have a good night.